has all led us here to this great city of Baltimore.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Baltimore, Maryland, let's get ready to rumble!
We are.
If there's anybody that's a big star in Baltimore, it's you. In Baltimore, whether you like it or not, you better learn to live with it, because I'm the best there is.
Is tonight as Championship Wrestling returns to Baltimore at the Baltimore Civic Center tonight.
And I have picked Baltimore out to be the place where this war is going to come to an end, because they got a lot of nice, fine hospitals there.
You know it, I know it, and Baltimore is.
It's the night of champions in Baltimore, Maryland, in the Civic Center.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to the Wrestle-Rama video podcast, blog, whatever it's called. Today, we're taking it back to 1989, really 1990. We're looking at the Wrestling Observer 1989 Yearbook, decade in review. So with this being the 89 Yearbook, it was released in 1990. Also taking a look back at the entire decade of the 80s, and that's really something that we'll be focusing on in this video review. So we see there the highlight of 89, really for American fans, was Terry Funk versus Ric Flair. You see between the two of them, they won Feud of the Year. Funk won Best Heel, Best on Interviews, the Bruiser Brody Memorial Award for Best Brawler, Hardest Worker. Ric Flair, question mark, is he the greatest ever? The awards he won that year was Wrestler of the Year, Most Outstanding, the Match of the Year versus Ricky Steamboat, and Reader's Favorite Wrestler. Look at some of the pictures on the cover, and some of these are from the Bash, which was at the Baltimore Arena. So, we're not going to go through everything. This is probably about 100 pages. That's on the inside. Look at that. Look at the 1990 graphics. So, who's still around? That's Spivey, Tommy Rich. Up there, Sid. Over here, Paul Lee, Crockett, Steamboat, Sting, Brody, Pillman, Animal. All three of them are gone. Eddie Gilbert, Missy, and the Great Muta. Here is the index. Wrestling Observer 89 Yearbook and Decade Review. Table of contents, wrestling in the 80s, top wrestling news stories of 89, 89 Wrestling Observer Awards, champions of 89, wrestling families, pro wrestling from A to Z, fictional excerpt of an NWA telecast, the 10 greatest matches of the 80s, and that's what we'll be looking at. That never took place. What are these? Oh no, that's the 10 greatest matches that never took place. Lucha Libre, an overview of Rudos to Technicos. The comeback story of 89, return of Terry Funk. Luthez looks at pro wrestling yesterday and today. Different look at Ric Flair, where does he stand? 1990 pro wrestling predictions. Gordon's top 10 cliches, the greatest matches of the 80s by Jeff Baldwin. That's what we'll be looking at. Great memories of the 80s, useless and sometimes useful wrestling trivia. Inside the UWF, that is the Japanese version, not the Herb Abrams or the Jim Ross. Mr. Mike Mondo, 89 year in review, 89 Wrestling Observer ratings, and 89 Pro Wrestler directory. So it's a lot in here. The awards, biggest shock of the year, best color commentator, some more cool pictures, Funk and Flair. So now the greatest matches of the 80s. This is put together by Jeff Baldwin, talking with other hardcore fans back in the day, and it's just pages of the best matches of the 80s. And I'm not going to go through all these pages. We're going to start with match 20. Inoki and Fujinami and the Cobra versus Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy Smith, and David Schultz. Number 19, Eddie Gilbert and Ricky Morton versus Masa Fuchi and Atsushi Onita. 1981 in Tupelo, Mississippi. That was the Tupelo Concession Stand Brawl. I highly recommend everybody look that up on YouTube. That was a great match. 1981. That was 41 years ago. Crazy, crazy brawl. Number 18, Hanson and Gordy versus Tenryu and Kawada from December of 1988. Kawada only got better after this match, believe it or not. He was him, Kawada, Kabashi, and Masawa. Late 80s, early 90s, some of the best wrestling you would see. 17, Ted DiBiase versus Jim Duggan, March 22nd, 1985 in Houston. That was the tuxedo match. I remember seeing that on TV. I believe, for old Baltimore fans, I believe it was on HTS back in the day, Home Team Sports. Number 16, Tiger Mask, which was Mitsuhiro Misawa versus Kobayashi, June 85 in Tokyo. Number 15, Flair versus Wyndham, January of 87 in Fayetteville. That was on TV. That was a great TV match, and here it's talking about it. It aired on an episode of Worldwide Wrestling. Great match. Great job of calling the match by Dusty. Tony. I was about to say, Tony, get me a cerveza. To this day, I will use Mas Cerveza Por Favor any opportunity I get because of that line from Dusty Rhodes. Number 14, Flair versus Funk, November of 89. That was their I Quit match in Troy, New York. That was Clash of the Champions. Number 13, Dundee and Landell versus Lawler and Dutch Mantel, March 86 in Memphis. Arguably, this was the best Memphis brawl of the decade. I love Memphis wrestling. That Memphis, Portland, and Continental from the 80s, you can just put that on and leave me alone, and I'm set. I don't have to move. Portland, this Memphis, and Continental from, really from 80, really Portland from earlier. Portland from the late 70s. But if you put Portland, Continental, or Memphis from 80 to 87, 88, just leave me alone. I'm good. Number 12, Flair versus Steamboat, April 2nd, 1989 in New Orleans. I believe that was the 55-minute match. And this is a great story. Some of you may have heard it. This was in the Superdome. And to show you how much wrestling has changed, this was in the Superdome in New Orleans, and it was a Clash of the Champions, and they didn't want to promote the Clash of the Champions because they didn't want to kill the live ticket sales. When come to find out, live ticket sales didn't do jack either. Number 11, Dynamite Kid versus Tiger Mask. This version was Satoru Sayama, the original. April 5th, 1982 in Tokyo. Two of the greatest wrestlers of all time met when both were at their peaks here in a 25 match of one incredible move after another. And I'll never forget when they had Dynamite versus Tiger Mask at Madison Square Garden. They showed on WWF TV back in '82. As a kid, I was blown away. Number 10, Choshu Fujinami and Maeda and Kingu Kimura and Super Strong Machine. He just passed away, actually. Versus Antonio Inoki, Saiji Sakaguchi, Kaiji Muto, who was the Great Muta, Kantaro Hoshino, and Yoshiaki Fujiwara. This sounds like a lot of, yeah, these were the guys that split off to the UWF. 1987 New Japan released Super Night Fever. It was a 10-man elimination, which went nearly 30 minutes. So, yeah, Maeda, Fujiwara. These were the guys that split off to the UWF. Number 9, Fujinami versus Akira Maeda. You see Maeda again. So August 19 of 87. June of 86. One of the most brutal professional style matches ever. Maeda just kicks Fujinami to death and looks incredible. Maeda, I'm not sure if the match might not be on here, but Maeda got kicked out of New Japan for lighting up, I think it was Choshu with a shoot kick to the face. Blew his eye out, messed his face up. Fujinami versus Maeda was number 9. Let's go up to number 8. Chigusa Nagayo versus Linus Asuka. Finally seeing some women's matches. February of 87. This was without a doubt the best of the many memorable matches these two had with one another. Match went 35 minutes. That's another thing. 80s Japanese women, you can find some great matches. Even into the 90s, Manami Toyota, Akira Hokuto, really from the 80s till they did that big dome show in November of 95, I believe it was. Dream Slam in 92, 93. Some great women's action. Number 7, Flair versus Wyndham. February of 1986 in Orlando. So we got January of 87 was number 15, Flair and Wyndham. February of 86, Flair and Wyndham is number 7. I'll tell you what, Barry Windham, when they talk about untapped potential, I think this guy just had it. He didn't have to work at it. He really didn't. He was never a big muscle-bound guy. I mean, he was a big dude, but you can tell he didn't spend a lot of time in the gym. But he just had it. I think if he would have, I don't know how to say it, focused and, I don't know, had a bit more go get him, he could have been a top star for well into the 90s. This was from the second Battle of Belts, so that was, Florida. I remember those specials. That was another thing that aired on HTS, the Battle of the Belts. First big match since returning from Titan. So, yeah, he was in WWF. Him and Mike Rotunda were WWF Tag Team Champions. He got tired of the travel and the cold and said, I'm going home. And this is what he did. And that's when they replaced Wyndham with Danny Spivey. If you go to 1986 WWF, you'll see Mike Rotundo teaming with Danny Spivey. And that's after Barry Windham left. Number 6, Riki Choshu and Yoshiaki Yatsu versus Jumbo Tsuruta and Genichiro Tenryu, January of 1986. The best tag team match of the decade. January of 1986. Number 5, legendary match. I don't know if it's the 5th greatest match of the 80s, but it was definitely a legendary match, and it lit World Class on fire. This started the Freebirds Von Erich feud, Gordy slamming the cage in Kerry's head. This is definitely on YouTube or Peacock Network, one of them. You should definitely check this match out. Number 4, Flair versus Steamboat, February of 89 in Chicago. Now, some people say, you see all these Flair and Steamboat matches as the best match of the 80s. This may be the second or third second or third on the list. But they had a match at the Capitol Center around this time frame that I think went 45, 50, 55 minutes. That was, some people say the best match they've ever seen. Number 3, Linus Asuka versus Jaguar Yokota, August of 85. Yokota is the greatest female wrestler of all time. Well, at this time, up until Manami Toyota started wrestling. Yokota and Asuka all set up for a superplex. When Asuka reverses the move, holds Yokota up vertical and drops her face first into the ring. Number 2, Dynamite Kid versus Tiger Mask, April of 83 in Tokyo. So we had Tiger Mask and Dynamite at number 11, August of 82. This is Dynamite versus Tiger Mask, April of 83. This match had Dynamite Kid breaking a water bottle on the ring post and bringing it into the ring with a spectacular finish of the best of 3 fall match. So before giving you their choice at the best match of the decade, I thought you'd like to hear some other opinions on the subject. So he called a bunch of people, got their opinion. Kurt Brown, Tiger Mask versus Tiger Kid, April 23, 1983. That's what this guy had as number 2. Pat Head, Tiger Mask versus Dynamite Kid, April 23, 83. And El Hijo de Santo versus Negro Casas, July of 87 in LA. Bob Clausen, Linus Asuka versus Chikusa Nagayo, February of 87. David Hanna, Jushin Liger versus Naoki Sano, September of 1989. Chris Alastra, Jushin Liger versus Naoki Sano. John McAdam. This guy used to have a huge videotape list that he would send out in the 80s and 90s. It was like a fucking phone book. John McAdam, Flair versus Steamboat, May of 89. And Tiger Mask versus Dynamite Kid, April 23, 1983. Rex Reed, Flair versus Steamboat, May 7. Tiger Mask versus Dynamite Kid, April 23, 1983. So these two guys picked the same match. Pete Letterberg, Linus Asuka versus Jaguar Yokota. Flair versus Steamboat, Tiger Mask versus Dynamite Kid, April 23rd. So if you haven't noticed yet, that Tiger Mask versus Dynamite Kid, April 23, 1983, is something you should go out of your way to see. Norm Dooley, who I believe is the guy who was first using the star rating system to rate matches. So like if this was a 3-star match, a 5-star match, I believe Norm Dooley was the first one to start doing that. He picks Flair versus Steamboat, April of 89. Pat Patterson versus Sergeant Slaughter. That was the alley fight at Madison Square Garden. That was a great match. I don't know about the best match of the 80s, but that was a great match. Flair versus Funk, November 15, 1989 in Troy, New York. Kim Wood. That is the Cincinnati Bengals strength trainer who was a close friend of Brian Pillman. Kim Wood was featured in the Pillman Dark Side of the Ring episode. So Kim Wood picks Tiger Mask versus Dynamite Kid. Gotta go watch that match, guys. Dave Meltzer himself. He picks Linus Asuka versus Jaguar Yokota, August 22nd, 1985. 12-woman tag match, December 1987. And Flair versus Steamboat, May 7, 1989. This guy goes on to thank everyone for their input. Mentioned Dave Meltzer ever happens to casually mention to you he's got a great idea for an article, be wary. Compiling this list has been a second job. And this guy's choice for the match of the decade, Flair versus Steamboat, May 7, 1989 in Nashville. What can you say about the best wrestling match that you've ever seen? Great ring entrances, a fantastic opening chop sequence. They took the crowd down at times, brought them as far up as you can go. There was a great post-match angle from Terry Funk. About the only thing bad I can say about the match is that it didn't last long enough, and it went more than 30 minutes. I just didn't want the match to end. I'll let you read the rest. All right, so that's it. The top matches of the 80s as voted on by the Dave Meltzer and some top followers of wrestling back in the 80s. And real quick, maybe we'll go over this one day, not today. Great wrestling memories of the 1980s. So maybe we'll look at that one day. Hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, guys. As always, check us out on WrestleRama.com. Give the video a like, subscribe to the channel for more updates in the future. And until next time, take care and see ya.
Has all that is here to this great city of Baltimore.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Baltimore, Maryland, let's get ready to rumble!
Oh, we are!
If there's anybody that's a big star in Baltimore, it's you. In Baltimore, whether you like it or not, you better learn to live with it, because I'm the best there is.
Is tonight as Championship Wrestling returns to Baltimore at the Baltimore Civic Center tonight.
And I have picked Baltimore out to be the place where this war is going to come to an end because they got a lot of nice, fine hospitals there.
You know it, I know it, and Baltimore is.
It's the Night of Champions in Baltimore, Maryland, in the Civic Center.